Good morning. I'm Bruce Weber, the Willem Quaker Dean of the Zicklin School of Business, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this episode of Zicklin Talks Business. Today, we will examine AI and the future of business education, asking ourselves the question, are we ready? Artificial intelligence is transforming the business landscape rapidly, and business education must evolve quickly too. As generative AI tools become more sophisticated and accessible, business schools are refining how students learn and assessing what aspiring professionals need to learn to succeed in an AI-driven world. In the next hour, we'll examine what AI is bringing to the classroom and to the workplace, and what the associated perils are. AI-generated presentations and research papers can be impressive. However, human-centric skills like critical thinking, communications, and inspiring leadership matter more than ever. Personalized learning, assignments tailored to individual needs, students shaping their own learning. Can AI deliver this at the level of quality Baruch and other business schools expect? In a world of instant information and thoughtful guidance from AI, what changes are faculty making in their courses? What new curriculum is being developed? AI is becoming part of every business function and decision. How are the expectations of employers for new graduates entering their workforce changing? Today's panel will discuss how the Zicklin School of Business and business schools everywhere can lead in preparing students for the future of work. Larry Zicklin, a BBA graduate of Baruch College, 1957, will lead the discussion today with me and my colleague, Professor Kanan Mohan, Zicklin's Associate Dean for Academic Initiatives and Innovation. And returning to Zicklin, welcome back, is Mr. James Massa, who earned his Executive MS in Finance with us in 2008. James is the Senior Executive Director of Software Engineering and Architecture at JP Morgan Chase and is a named inventor on 6 patents. He also holds a master's degree in digital design from Harvard University, as an AWS certified solutions architect who's led award-winning projects on data quality, responsible AI, compliance, operations, trading, and program management. AI-driven changes are happening now, and the opportunity to shape the future of business education has never been greater. I note that the description of this webinar that was posted on the Zicklin website was developed with ChatGPT's large language model. At the end of our panel, there'll be time for questions from you, the audience, and you can submit them via the Zoom chat feature to my colleague and Associate Dean, Gwen Webb. Once again, our moderator is Larry Zicklin, who's former CEO and chairman of Neuberger Berman, teaches in the Zicklin MBA and undergraduate honors program. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Larry, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Bruce. I'm so impressed with the large attendance for this webinar. I think this may be one of the largest attendances we've ever had. So there's a great interest in the subject of AI. And in the interest of full disclosure, I just want to preface the webinar by telling our audience that this will be a webinar about AI, in which AI was used to at least help me in my preparation. So I'm not only talking about it, I'm using it. So let me ask our guests, and let me start with you, Kanan. Is AI already shaping the historic process of education today? And if not, will it do so over the next 5 years?
That's the most fundamental question all of us are trying to look at and reckon with, Larry. The answer is yes, but it's a complicated, more nuanced kind of answer, where yes, it has changed how faculty think about what is expertise in a particular area, in a particular discipline. What are we ought to be teaching our students? How do we prepare students for the current market? And it is impacting how students think about learning. How can they use it as a tool sitting next to them to improve their process of learning? It has changed how administrators, leadership, and staff think about the educational environment that you provide. So in all of these ways, yes, it is changing higher education dramatically. But in one really important way, it isn't changing. Faculty are still considering the foundational skills like critical thinking, judgment, decision-making, creativity, communicating and collaborating with colleagues across the spectrum as still fundamental to how we develop our student body in becoming part of the global citizenry. So I think that aspect, our faculty, our colleagues, students, staff, leadership, all of us emphasize. And I think about, if we take a moment to reflect upon how we think about higher education in the US and at Baruch and Zicklin, if we think about our undergraduate program, I split this into two really interesting parts that have connections between the two. If we take like a rectangle and cut it in the diagonal, one side is reflective, where we help students prepare as global citizens, think about the humanities, the liberal arts, math, sciences, and so on. And the other part is professional. How do we connect such thinking to applying these skills in a particular career and professional path? And AI is disrupting and impacting both of these aspects, right? And in interesting ways. So I think we all still hold dear the foundational aspects of what we try to impart in our students.
James, you have any comment on that?
Hey, I totally agree with everything you're saying. I can't say that I'm at an institution of education. I'm at an institution, at a corporate institution, where we're very much looking forward to getting the new generation of folks who have these critical thinking skills that you're mentioning, Kanan, perhaps more in a liberal arts vein than in a pure trade school vein that may be hard to keep pace.
How do we know now, Kenan, what students will require in this new environment?
That's an excellent question, Larry. I think over the years, over the decades, if we think about significant disruptions that we have experienced, and almost with every one of those disruptions, people questioned about the value of higher education. Are we teaching the right things to our students? Are we predicting what they will need 5 years, 10 years into the future? If we think about the internet, the introduction of the iPhone, and so on, I think faculty, the way we are trained, we think about these disruptions as how does it impact over time? What are the temporal impacts of this? And we don't have knee-jerk reactions to some of these things that could become fads. So we digest this and act with a slow pacing approach, with a more deliberate approach to how we respond to this. So with that approach, we are cautious in how we predict what's needed in the next 5 years, right? I'm sure anybody here, if we ask how this is going to turn out in the next 5 years, most of would probably get it wrong, because most of us wouldn't have predicted how fast the adoption rate was for generative AI in the last few years, right? So I think that deliberate approach that faculty take and the emphasis on the foundational skills is what I think we hold dear. And that's why I think any changes in the trajectory that's needed, if we focus on foundational skills, that helps students adapt for any of these disruptions that's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years.
And I saw this morning that a report was just released that indicates that American students now have the lowest skills in reading and math than they've ever had since this was measured. And I'm wondering if that number is true. Does it have something to do with the new technology which relieves students of their need to think, to know math, to read? Is there some relation between skills deteriorating and the advent of these new technologies, starting with the calculator?
I think yes. Sorry, James, go on.
I was going to say, maybe we're just switching the skills we need or emphasize. For example, with AI, the critical thinking and an element of leadership, I think, are both there. So the AI is extremely complex and it's doing a high volume of work. So our ability to critically understand whether this high volume of work that was complex is done correctly, and can you organize the AI and potentially agentic AI in a way that gives you good results. So that's a new and very intense skill. Maybe at some point people will look back and say the skills that we used to do are like blacksmithing or something like that has gone away.
And do you think students will do more critical thinking in this world of high technology than they had done previously? And will leadership be more stressed than it was? And can you teach leadership?
I don't know if you can teach leadership or not. I think you can, because we have the schools for it. But I will tell you that when I'm using AI, I have been promoted to my level of incompetence. I have now these agents working for me, many more agents working for me than people used to work for me. And so I go basically as far as I can take it. I reach my level of incompetence, and where I can't get things done, it becomes too complex for me. So I believe that if I was increase my level of leadership capability and organization, I went to Baruch and got a training in that, it would really help.
Kenan, has the curriculum changed at all since AI has been initiated?
Yes, we have had numerous significant changes in our curriculum in the last 2 to 3 years. And I'd like to categorize the changes into a few buckets here. On the one hand, the introductory courses that we focus on. If we take our undergraduate program, the foundational general educational courses, the introductory courses in any of our disciplines that we focus on, there I think faculty are very cautious about introduction of AI, because those are the courses where we cultivate and develop critical thinking, foundational understanding of what is the landscape of a particular discipline. So there, we've been careful about how and where to introduce AI. And the more significant embrace is happening in the more advanced areas. When you go to an advanced elective or specific major requirements in our program, faculty have been more enthusiastic about introduction of AI, because once students are able to master the foundational aspects of a discipline, responsibly incorporating AI to solve higher level problems is where we want to target our efforts on. I imagine this in some of the daily work that I do in my job. When I take technology products on, when I work on coding projects, these days, almost always I start with ChatGPT or Copilot. And it writes 90 to 95% of the code that I expect for some of these weekend projects, fast projects that I need to work on. If I circumvented my learning process, if I was not a good coder to begin with, I will not be able to add the 5 to 10% that I need to add on top of what ChatGPT produces, right? I think that's the challenge that faculty reckon with when we think about curriculum changes. Strong foundational curriculum where we are either AI free or AI assisted, where we help students learn to think logically. And then AI integration and AI assisted learning happens in other parts of the discipline once they have the foundation to stand on. So if I have to give examples, for example, our information systems and statistics department has created an AI essentials course. It talks about the landscape of AI. How did we come here from decades back, starting with AI, machine learning, deep learning, and now generative AI. What is prompt engineering? How do we think about AI safety? What are guardrails that we need to think about? So any student who's taking any major in our program would benefit from such a basic AI essentials course. The department has also created minors in quantitative foundations for AI, applications of AI in various businesses. And our various departments have taken application-oriented AI courses as well. Just recently, 2 weeks back, we had our operations management faculty come in with a slew of courses that focus on AI-assisted inventory management, supply chain analytics, that squarely focus on how AI can help in operations management. We have our finance and economics faculty focusing on data science and AI in finance and economics. Accounting, our major, has a track on accounting analytics. And I also want to be cognizant that not all AI is generative AI, right? While everyone starts to gravitate towards generative AI, we have had AI for decades now, starting from machine learning, deep learning, and then now generative AI. So our curriculum takes a very deliberate, intentional approach to incorporating all of this in appropriate ways.
Hey, Larry, if you will allow me to chime in,
Please.
I'd like to just put my dean hat on for a minute, because I think the questions we're being asked today are questions that have been asked before in business school settings, because business schools have always been about matching the skills our graduates come out with the skills that are needed in work in businesses like JP Morgan Chase in the future for our graduates. And you and others are beneficiaries of that. I think another important point for me to make is, and consistent with what Kanan was just pointing out, is business schools and universities in general have a very federated structure. So it's quite different than, say, James working at JP Morgan Chase, where the CEO and the C-suite is kind of creating the plan and you're executing on that. Whereas we give a lot of authority and autonomy to faculty. We have curriculum committees in every department. We have a school curriculum committee. And if you think about it, we have a faculty of 230 graduates of the top PhD programs in business fields from around the US and the world. And what's important for Kanan and I to do is to kind of empower that expertise and that knowledge in the operations management group, in the finance group, for them to take a hard look at where AI is going to add value in their disciplines. And I think, it's very clear that, the way generative AI has been built it's essentially mimicking the work done by experts. It can identify and reproduce patterns at an incredible scale now. That's where the real innovation is coming from. But I also realize that the AI that's out there, the technology, just kind of like the internet and the telephone, eventually is a commoditized technology. It's a general purpose tool. And really, the companies that are going to succeed, the executives and the managers that are going to do the best, are going to be those that have access to the same commoditized technology, but they're going to win based on having better humans in the organization, better people, better leaders, those that really understand which problems are well suited to AI and which are not. And in Zicklin, Larry, we kind of rely on the faculty to assess that in their own fields. What are the foundational skills, and how do we complement what AI can do for our students so they can go out and be highly productive working with James in the future?
Does that mean when you hire new faculty, you are looking for that skill, the ability to take their departments beyond where they've been in the future?
I'm sure that's something that comes up in the lunchtime and the dinner table conversation with the faculty. Where do you think AI is going to lead our field? Where is it going to find the most valuable applications? And I don't know if I shared this one with you before, Larry, but one example of AI that's not adding much value now I found was there's an exchange traded fund that's been around now about 8 years, and the ticker symbol is AIEQ. And essentially they built an AI model on the IBM Watson platform to basically select stocks. So based on all the prior training of what's outperformed historically and what hasn't, it constructs a portfolio. This portfolio has underperformed the S&P 500 almost every year since its 2017 launch. And I think it shows to me that, first of all, financial markets are very efficient. There's a lot of smart people working in the markets, and it's very difficult to outperform. And AI, for all its merits, is still got to have some Achilles heels. I mean, we can talk later about, ethics and responsible AI. But here's an example where you would think the tool of AI applied to picking stocks that are going to outperform would at least achieve the average performance. It hasn't, because it's a very tricky domain to outperform in.
The perfect arbitrage. You go long the S&P 500 and you go short this index. James, would you think that JP Morgan Chase would start to accept non-college graduates in their workforce who have mastered the techniques of AI? Is a 4-year degree going to be necessary in the future?
Well, I can't speak for the policy of the company or predict what they'll
You
do.
personally.
But I could just say on a very personal level, these skills are incredibly important. And I do believe that skills-based hiring and skills-based talent evaluation are becoming the norm. A little bit less of who you know and where you've been, and a little bit more of how really what I think is wonderful about the high ROI kind of place that Baruch is. So I think maybe if we lean into that a little bit in the Baruch space, we could really go far, because AI is producing faster, better, cheaper in the business world. And I feel if you're producing faster, better, cheaper education, that's right up Baruch's alley, and it'd be wonderful to see.
Well, students might want to pay a cheaper price and get the same results rather than going to universities, because information is now becoming cheap and fast. And does it now take a 4-year education to do what it took a 4-year education to do, when I graduated from Baruch?
Well, that's a super interesting question. I didn't want to broach, changing the length of an education on this call, because I thought that there's something about the 4-year degree that the human brain works over the 4-year period, and there's a maturation of your age and the length of time. However, during the 4 years, certainly I want to get more out of the 4 years, and ideally I want to get it for a cheaper price. But I definitely want to get more out of those 4 years than I did previously. I expect a higher educational output. I expect to be more trained in the things that are enduring, that Kanan especially was saying. And for the enduring things would be like the responsible AI and ethics around it, but some of the use cases in business remain the same. We've always had to process documents. Maybe we did them manually, maybe we did them with some level of automation, and now we're really on steroids with the AI, but we still have to process documents for a million different reasons, and so on.
Bruce, let me turn to you for a second. Given how cheap information is now and how quickly it can be derived as opposed to 50 years ago, do you think 2-year colleges will become more popular in the future?
Well, I think right now there is choices that are out there for 18, 19, 20-year-olds to find places to build a skill set that makes them employable, that's different than a 4-year college experience. I think what James was alluding to, though, was a level of maturity and maybe foresight and adaptability that I think a 4-year experience, if it's truly a transformative learning experience, is going to make somebody a stronger, more productive employee than if they'd simply been given, a trade school approach to one particular technical skill. But I think this is on our shoulders as business schools. I think the market is going to move on from us if all we are is an expensive credentialing exercise, rather than what we aspire to be, what we want to be, which is a transformative learning experience. And I think this, is really in the hands of the faculty and the dean's offices of the business schools that are out there to really figure out, what is the value add of teaching in an AI infused world. Because if the classroom experience is the same as it was 20 years ago, with all the tools that are available now, that's not a transformative learning experience, in my opinion. And I think that's kind of where we need to, continually reflect is, what do we do in this course with the students to make sure that they're sophisticated in using AI, but they also understand the limitations, and they understand that there's going to be ways to differentiate yourself as a manager in not just using the tool, but understanding where it doesn't work as well as other areas. And I look forward to that, because that's a really interesting conversation for us.
Kanan, pursuing what Bruce just said, how do you motivate faculty to make these changes, which I assume in many cases are uncomfortable to make because they require lots of work, maybe some personnel changes, and not everybody likes change?
I think at the school here, we have this ethos and culture of bringing excitement to the table. The first approach that we take is when we go talk to faculty about this, we first listen to what kind of approaches that faculty have tried over the last few years. How have they adapted? How they assess students? How have they changed what is taught in their particular discipline-specific courses? And then listening to various stories of what they've done, we also figure out who are at the cutting edge of innovation, the faculty that have tried really new things and changed the way they've thought about pedagogy and how teaching is done, and bring them to various forums and showcase them. For example, in the last couple of Zicklin faculty meetings, we have showcased faculty that have won awards in innovation and excellence in teaching. Faculty that have really pushed the boundaries on how they think about pedagogy, right? Bruce and I were talking about Professor Hagit Levi-Shalal's award-winning initiatives in our accounting classes, where she put in effort to individually customize how cases work, how the data that's behind cases work, and how she thinks about using that in her classes. We talked about Professor Bill Milheiser's approach to creating mini cases. Bill created a slew of mini cases to change how he teaches his operations classes, right? So when we identify really excellent work by faculty in teaching, We bring them to the fore, we showcase them to kind of spark interest among others. And then the network grows slowly, right? So these kind of opportunities are also fostered by the Center for Teaching and Learning. We have a very close partnership with our college level center. The center focuses on pedagogical approaches that are very different from the older approach of the sage in the stage model, right? Now we have to think about how faculty role in teaching and working with students has changed, and the Center for Teaching and Learning plays an important role in that. They bring to the table concrete approaches that I've always learned from them, that here are a few techniques that I can take and apply in the class tomorrow, right? It's not in the abstract, it's an exercise in concrete applications of teaching techniques. And our faculty embrace that. And we've also seen how this is well received by students. And faculty also recognize students come in with different needs and learning styles. So the uniform approach of going to the stage and lecturing, we all know now is not a current approach. So faculty kind of bring all new techniques to the table. And AI is just one of the other disruptions that they're working with, right? For every disruption, I think these new techniques change the way faculty think about teaching. And I go back to excitement. I think this is learning and teaching is a fun exercise. It's an exciting exercise. And bringing faculty to the table to be part of that excitement is really key.
Can any school keep up with the accelerating pace of change? I've read that it takes 2 years to introduce a new course into the curriculum. 2 years today is a lifetime. How does that change?
Yes, I think it's by design, we have this very deliberative approach of taking time when we make changes in our curriculum, because faculty want to focus on things that are not kind of following the fads or jumping into the bandwagon of something new that's happening, right? So the process of deliberations that faculty discuss, debate, brainstorm before making significant programmatic changes is by design. And it keeps our program stable and develops those foundational skills in our students. That said and done, I think we need agility in our processes too. So we have our own ways of infusing agility. For example, every business area at Zicklin has a series of courses called special topics courses, where we create a shell of a course where we don't describe what the course is going to do. We just describe to students that this course is going to focus on a current topic that may change every semester. And then when robotic process automation took form, our information systems colleagues created a pilot course using the special topics course to teach RPA in that course. When ChatGPT came up, we taught the AI essentials as a special topics course. And years back, when data analytics started, many of the courses, new courses that we developed, we pilot them as these special topics courses, which can be done in a few months. We can decide now to offer in the next semester a new special topics course that faculty think is current and relevant. And then once it's tested for a few semesters, faculty then look at the data, evaluate, think through, is this a stable phenomenon that we need to make this part of our regular offerings in our curriculum? So it kind of works hand in hand, the stable, deliberative approach of changing curriculum, plus the agile approach of trying new things and experimenting with this in the classroom.
Do you think the future will hold lots of experimental courses that perhaps last less than a semester and will become permanent if the students vote for them with their feet?
Right, I think that's an tricky question, right? I think it's going to be a balance. We will have a stable curriculum that we will continue offering. And going back for a minute, Larry, to your earlier question of how higher education is going to change and do we foresee changes in the 4-year education? I think the same discussion happened when the internet spawned massively online courses, right? What we call as MOOCs. And there were huge predictions of how MOOCs are going to obviate the need for a 4-year college education. But that hasn't turned out to be true. And the same, I think, is probably going to persist as well, where as long as we adapt and meet the needs, we still have a stable curriculum that we focus on foundational elements of education, plus an agile piece, right? We don't want to skew our balance in one way or other to either side.
Could I mention one thing
Please,
there?
James.
Thank you so much. Hey, so I love the idea of the special topics course and the concept of having a just-in-time curriculum as a sort of a corollary to just-in-time learning. And then one other thing I would like to layer on top of that is perhaps a customized curriculum. So a lot of what AI brings is customization. You can see that customization in marketing, for example. So there'd be perhaps there's a space for customization in curriculum where students can just in time figure that they want to learn about some particular subject, and then they can go that direction. and it can be supported by the school, I think that people will walk with their feet towards that for sure.
That leads to the next question. What forums does a school like Baruch have that allows students to express themselves in asking for change? Where does the student initiative come from?
A very important question, Larry. So in the last year, our provost had charged a cross-college committee on AI curriculum development. And I had co-led the committee with a faculty member from the philosophy department in the Weissman School of Arts and Sciences, Professor Elizabeth Edenberg. So there's a nice combination of somebody with a technology background and somebody with a philosophy background looking at AI's role in curriculum development. The first exercise that committee undertook, that Elizabeth and I went to, was the student government, the undergraduate student government. So we work very closely with the undergraduate student government and the graduate student assembly. I have monthly meetings with representatives from the undergraduate student government. These are phenomenal conversations where they come in, they really have their finger on the pulse of what student thinking is. They share with us challenges that students face. How does it feel to be a freshman versus a transfer? How do we navigate different disruptions and technologies that are coming in? So Elizabeth and I went to the undergraduate student government to ask about AI. And it's a big room with probably 50 students in the room that are all in leadership positions in the USG, the undergraduate student government. And every one of them has used AI, and very often, like almost every day. And the conversations were very thoughtful. One of the students finished the conversation by saying, in this whole disruption with AI, the main concern for the student is, where is our voice in this, right? If it is used irresponsibly, and if it's replacing certain elements of what, as humans, we play a role in, the student's concern is, where is my voice in that? How do I make sure that I use it in a responsible way and add a layer on top of it with my voice showing up?
I agree with you so much, Kannan. Like one of the things that I noticed and everyone did with the internet is that how constrained my learning had been as I grew up into learning exactly the courses and reading exactly the book that I was given. And as soon as you got these hyperlinks, you just sort of followed your own path. And it was so exciting to learn what you wanted and go down whichever rabbit hole suited me. So I would love to see more of that, where the student gets excited and is encouraged to be excited about something and learn that thing, and that can be supported because, wow, we have this AI that does it.
James, that's an excellent point. I think there is a lot of opportunity that we haven't tapped into that yet. I think that's the next significant project direction that we want to go in various disciplines, right? I think what you mentioned, it's spot on. And the other really important issue, Larry, the underlying phenomenon in what you asked is, I think the customization opportunities that AI offers also provides us an opportunity to address performance gaps. Students coming in with different learning styles, facing challenges outside of the classroom that might not help them put their best foot forward in learning. I think AI could be part of that equation to help them learn better, right? If we see bimodal distributions in our classes, a faculty member going in to teach a class of 80 students with a bimodal distribution is a really important challenge, right? Few students outperforming the others and a few students really struggling. I think throwing AI into that equation to help faculty member effect change, to close the performance gap among students in the classroom, I think that's an opportunity that's yet to be tapped largely.
And do you think, I might have missed this, but do you think learning in the future, as per James, will become more customized?
I think
So.
Doubt, Larry. I mean, I think what we already can do now is have kind of like Kanan's experience with Hagit's accounting teaching. Every student is getting an individualized question. It's not much of a step to then tailor your next question based on how well you answered the previous question. And a student right now could take problems or assignment questions given by a faculty member and ask to have several more questions in the same format, same vein, with the solution provided so that they can get additional practice. So I think we do have, at this point, lots of ways that a student can customize their own learning and maybe reinforce some of the things that are difficult for them. AI is very good at offering alternative explanations, right? Provide me with a different explanation of the capital asset pricing model. You'll get some very insightful input from these tools.
But if learning is more customized, that implies, I think, that faculty might not be familiar with all these aspects of the customization. How do you grade? How will faculty become familiar with all the aspects of the customization?
Well, I'll just say, Larry, in my own, teaching career. So, you and I were NYU colleagues for some years, and I was here on the faculty at Baruch and taught at London Business School. The software that I was teaching with, so I was teaching decision models and information systems courses. So every year there were updates to the software. So at some point, instead of telling the students, here's step by step how to, create a linear program in Excel, you began to have different tools and even macros that were available. So I stopped worrying about the step-by-step cookbook approach to teaching, which I started with, and moved on to here's the outcome you want to generate. And now it's up to you to use the tool, find the manual, and then once the manuals were online, use the help mode to get yourself there. So I think it's really faculty starting to move from an approach to knowledge that's fairly linear to one that actually lets the students kind of explore, almost in the way James was alluding to, through hyperlinks and following different paths that all lead to a good or a better solution. And I think it's up to the faculty to recognize that giving a more open-ended question with AI is actually going to be more valuable to the students.
I always thought of faculty as a demanding job, but it seems to me in the new world, it might become even more demanding.
I'm totally with you on that. I think it's much more complex and many more things. And one thing counterintuitive that has occurred to me throughout this webinar is that I believe it may get more personal than before. You might think that AI is going to mean that the AI becomes the teacher, replaces the teacher, things like that. I think that the AI may take care of some of their administrative role, and then their interaction, direct one-on-one interaction with individual students, less than the whole class, individually helping, coaching, motivating, and evaluating the student. I believe the evaluating will be very also important in the one-on-one as the students become more individualized, as well as from the aspect of just verifying that, like, I can see that the human is doing this work that I'm evaluating.
James, when you hire young people in your area, have your expectations changed as to what you are going to require? Are you requiring more, 10 times more, less? How has that changed?
Because I feel very sad about that, Larry, because I require so much more of these people than was ever required of me. We have better ability to evaluate both their hard skills, so they must demonstrate hard skills much more than before, because we have technology that can spend the time evaluating that stuff with them, as well as they have to have a very good set of soft skills that I say that people in my generation did not have whatsoever.
I want to go to Kanan and Bruce now. What areas of the business school require the most change, the most redesign, or is there such a thing?
So if I think about a few areas in the business school, the academic side, the faculty, the departments, curriculum, if I put all of that into one segment, and then leadership, administration into another segment, and then staff, and then students. I think on the academic side, curriculum, many of the changes that faculty are organically bringing up in collaboration with students, staff, administration, I think that's happening already, right? The rate of change there is already keeping up with where we need to be. The biggest opportunity where we haven't changed much yet is in our operations. The staff leadership working together to change how as a business school we operate is going to also require some rethinking in the world of AI. In the past, we have seen certain examples of universities that are kind of bright spots in higher education where using data analytics, machine learning to change how schools operate, universities operate, that result in improved student outcomes. I think that's a big opportunity that Baruch and Zicklin has on the table. We have taken some steps toward that direction, but I think There is a lot left for us to be done. And that's where I think we can really move the needle a lot in the next couple of years. Bringing to bear all the tools that we have now to look at our data to understand how do we change our operations? How do we make it more efficient? How do we make it more human-friendly? Often as a big business school, it might feel like we are catering to the needs of a lot of people with very few staff, faculty, and leadership in our teams, right? How do we support the human side of things using this technology better? I think that's where we can move the needle a lot.
Bruce, how should the university support the continuous faculty development that's being required as they attempt to keep pace with AI?
Yeah, I'll extend what Conan said, is that, I think we have, at our scale, we enroll over 15,000 students now at Zicklin. We had the record enrollment this fall. We need to think about how do we scale our use of these tools. And you started off, Larry, by asking, what areas of Zicklin need to do the most adjustments in how they, and I cannot think of one area that's not currently adjusting its approach, because really what we have traditionally taught in business schools, ChatGPT and all the other LLMs that are out there can do much of those rote skills that we were teaching can be done, through these AI tools. So faculty do need to push forward. How do faculty learn how to move forward with these tools to improve outcomes for students? I think they are doing this amongst themselves. Faculty go to conferences regularly. For instance, I'm going to be at the AACSB Dean's Conference in Toronto in mid-October. And I can see on the agenda, about half the sessions have something to do with AI and new technology tools and their implications for transforming business education. So I think in our ordinary academic activities, the top of the agenda now is deploying these tools, improving student outcomes. And I think we'll have additional resources and events within Zicklin and Baruch that are going to give faculty chances to learn, because it's, as you pointed out, James, it's a moving target for faculty. And I think faculty find this part of the appeal of this job. I mean, faculty jobs at business schools, to me, are dream jobs. You're constantly challenged to adapt and improve what you do and use new tools. And you're around young, ambitious, curious people every day. What a great job. But I think you've got a good question, Larry. We need to encourage all faculty to continuously review and improve how they approach their teaching.
And is AI being incorporated into the school among the faculty and the administrators, support staff, in addition to the faculty, among the administrators and support staff in particular?
I think we're just scratching the surface right now, Larry, to be honest. Administratively, occasionally we'll use AI to maybe make a recommendation on scheduling or to improve a memo that might go out. But I think, Kanan, if you could share the example of our proposed BS program, I think we do have something in the works that truly reflects our viewpoint that AI is a new and highly important topic for our students that's going to lead to great career opportunities for them.
Yes, Bruce. The thinking that faculty are put into this new path is that, if you take a step back, look at decades of how Zicklin has operated and served its students, in our undergraduate side, we have offered a BBA degree, and we have done a reasonably good job in offering that with great student outcomes. Now, with this opportunity of data science and AI that's come up, we saw a different path that we could take and complementary path that could add to the portfolio of programs that we offer. And we realized that the structure of the BBA program doesn't really cater to offering to the needs of what the market needs in data science and AI. Our BBA program requires a significant depth in general education. And then we add the business core, where students are exposed to every business function area. They understand a bit of finance, management, marketing, information technology, and so on. And then they specialized in one area in business. But what we have learned, our faculty in conversations with industry contacts have learned that for data science and AI, we really need to rethink the structure. So we are proposing a new program where we still have the general education foundation, but instead of the business core and a major, we'll have a data science core, data science and AI core, with significant quantitative and mathematical foundations that students need to go through to understand how do we understand the foundations of data science and AI, and then pick one domain area of application, be it accounting or finance or public policy or journalism or political science. Pick one area where data science has really strong applications, and these days it will be very easy to pick an area where you have these applications and pair them together, connect the dots between the foundations in data science and AI and the area, the business context in which you have to ask the right questions and use the toolkit to answer those questions. I think that's a really new path, uncharted path for Zicklin. We are all excited about this path in building this program.
Kanan, do universities, colleges have a responsibility to teach AI, students studying AI, to use it both ethically and responsibly? Because AI can be used unethically and irresponsibly.
Absolutely, Larry. No question about it at all. In fact, when we are introducing new paths in our curriculum, we make it a requirement that ethics and responsible use is part of the curriculum. We recently created an advanced certificate in AI for managers, and one of the required courses there is ethics of AI. The undergraduate minor on AI requires an ethics of AI course. When the provost charged the cross-college committee, we had a technologist working with a philosopher, right? So the question of ethics is front and center in all of our minds. And I think it is our responsibility to introduce students to these critical questions. What's right and wrong in using AI? Is the impact on the labor and workforce we need to cautiously think about? Is it fair when decisions come out of AI? And if human is not in the loop, we need to seriously think about long-term fairness question. We need to think about algorithmic bias when these decisions come up. We need to think about what kind of data that is used in training these AI models. And is this data already inbuilt with biases that an AI system could perpetuate? So introducing students to these questions is really critical. On the one hand, when they develop technological and business-oriented skills, I think they need to pair that with real ethical questions. And understanding the ethical questions is the other side of the coin, is that will drive responsible use. Then when it comes to a point of decision making, they need to think through all these questions before actually deciding whether and how to use the AI system in that decision.
And I would go ahead, James.
I was just saying, I totally agree with all your points, Kanan, about the responsible aspect. And then also I would make it somewhat akin to driving a car. There's just a technical aspect where you have to get a driver's license to use this thing, or otherwise you're a danger. There's a little bit of that, or a lot of that with AI, I believe, that goes beyond bias and things. It's just you can make literally life-threatening decisions if you don't use it correctly.
And we've seen many instances in the past months of AI being used incorrectly. Let me kind of talk about the results of our AI preparation. How do we know if what we're doing in the AI area is working at Baruch? Who makes that decision, and what's the evidence?
I'll take a crack at that, Larry. I think, we assess how we do at Zicklin in a number of different ways. I mean, the one you're familiar with is, we have an accrediting body, AACSB, and we're reviewed on a 5-year cycle for continuous improvement across 9 different standards. So clearly anything, we're doing with the new program in data science and AI, the BS program that Kanan was mentioning, these are all going to be subject to our typical assurance of learning, outcomes measures that we do for our students, faculty, scholarly, academic productivity. So we've got standard tools right now to assess ourselves across, many different disciplines, including, now AI and data science. But I think more importantly, it's going to be, what do the employers like JP Morgan Chase and the technology firms and the other recruiters of our students let us know about the skill sets and the capabilities, the leadership and soft skills of our students compared to 5 or 10 years ago. And as I think we've said before, it's a moving target. And, James and I are aware that the standards, the expectations of the top companies now are very high. And, we have to work hard at Zicklin to have our students be able to achieve those in their 4 years with us. But I think when we create curriculum changes, we want to make sure that there's a feedback loop that we take into account for, us as faculty and dean's office to know whether our initiatives are working. And we get those signals with enrollment, we get them from career services, we get them from the recruiters of our students.
Bruce, I love what you say about those outcome measures of the students. And from an employer perspective, one of the challenges of years gone by that I believe you're now overcoming to some degree is, hey, what does a degree really mean? And what did they really? I feel that with AI and more personalized attention from the professor, we may be able to give a more detailed report card, so to speak, of exactly what it is that this student has been accredited with when they left the high ROI institution of Baruch.
I hate to interrupt, but we have a record number of questions here, and I'd like to get to just a couple of them. Larry, do you have any last ones before we go to questions?
No, you go ahead.
Okay, well, the first question is not a question, it's a comment, but it's from a student. She says, great presentation today. As a Zicklin student, I used more AI than I wanted last semester to try to supplement an asynchronous text course. The AI was very often inaccurate, so having the underlying knowledge and critical thinking skills to understand that the AI was wrong was imperative. So this is the experience of one of our students currently. So I think we can take great cheer in seeing that the use of AI is very cautious and very realistic.
That's evidence of critical thinking.
Absolutely, absolutely. Again, choosing among many questions posed. If AI can deliver lectures, grade assignments, and even coach students, what is the role of the faculty in 5 to 10 years? Will professors become facilitators of learning rather than content experts? Wow. Maybe Kanan or Bruce?
I can take a crack at it. I think that's already happening. The faculty, in addition to being experts in content, I think have already been over the period of time adapting to how do we cater to the different learning styles that students come to the table with. What kind of teaching techniques and pedagogical techniques help students learn better, help improve student outcomes? So yes, as a facilitator, as a coach, as a mentor, so teaching technical skills can be done by reading a book, watching a video, right? Reading online, using an AI system, but adding a layer of judgment, critical thinking, creativity, decision-making, working with human beings. I think that's even more critical now than it was in the past. And I think there's a role faculty have to play in that, a really critical role.
They'll be an expert in those things you mentioned. It's not like they're not experts anymore. They're just experts in different things that you mentioned.
The faculty are well trained in the disciplines they're teaching, and they're writing the cutting edge research that eventually is going to be in the textbooks on these fields. So I think what's facilitation is a good term for it. And the tools now are going to allow a faculty member to take all of their course materials, notes, slides, video recordings, transcripts of their lectures, and they could create a chatbot for their students, some kind of agentic AI that would give the students the chance to, interrogate based on all the materials for the course, how would, this particular tax problem be addressed? And if the general AI tools that are out there today have flaws and don't reflect what your faculty member, the instructor there is teaching, that's a sign that the tools, do have limitations. The AI tools have weaknesses, and they generally don't reveal their weaknesses either. They give you a false sense of security. And I think that's what students are waking up to. And it's good to hear that question, Gwen.
Another question, kind of along this line, is from Don Vredenberg, a management professor at the Zicklin School. Will the need to increasingly incorporate growing and complicated technical AI skills crowd out behavioral and strategic concepts with increasingly limited curriculum space?
I think the opposite. So that's one, because there'll be less technical things needed. The LLM is natural language. So if you think of like from software engineering perspective, for example, people don't have to know the gobbledygook of technical mumbo jumbo of coding so much. They just say, give me an application that does X, and they speak more like that to the computer. And we're going more and more that way, that you speak in plain, simple English. Your ability to think top down and explain something simple, take the so-called complex thing and explain it simple, that will be the skill.
I agree with James. I think if you think back to Google essentially commodifying information search, I think what the AI tools today do is they commodify content generation, but it just puts that much more of the onus on you to reflect on that content that's been artificially generated and understand its nuances and its shortcomings. And I think strategic thinking and kind of behavioral aspects of how you lead an organization are even stronger now that content generation is basically moving to zero, it's a zero cost commodity.
Do facilitators of learning now require, in the future, will they require a PhD? Because that's a concentration in one area where you learn almost all there is to know about this one area. And it seems to me, as facilitators of learning, you're going to have to know a lot about a lot.
I think business schools have room for both, Larry. Many of our faculty, have research PhDs and are therefore well trained in how to move the frontier of knowledge in their field. But a lot of our instructors don't have research PhDs and aren't expected to be producing original research. So I think there's room for both at Zicklin and other business schools, Larry.
Do you think in the future you'll have fewer tenured professors and more non-tenured, fewer full-time professors and more part-time professors with specialties in various areas?
I think the balance has been shifting towards fewer faculty that have high research expectations as a percentage of the total. But I think what it means is we have some faculty whose expectations are focused on instruction, and therefore they can invest, more time and more effort into turning the classroom into a transformative learning experience, perhaps than the faculty who have a high expectation to be publishing in the top journals in their field.
If I may, I think Larry, you're asking a very fundamental question that's close to the heart of higher education. All of the developments that we have seen in AI and generative AI relies on knowledge that's already produced. The models are learning from knowledge produced. If we don't have PhDs that are extending the body of knowledge, creating new knowledge, then we will end up in a world with stochastic parrots of AI generating content, learning from its own content, and so on, right? What would be the value of living in a society like that? I think we want people with PhDs that are extending, pushing the boundaries on the body of knowledge.
I could tell a funny story about that exactly what you said, Conan. My father is a professor at our sister school, Hunter, and I put and he's 80-something years old. I put ChatGPT on his phone, and he downloaded it and he said, "Who invented this and that?" And he was like, "That's me. That's correct. That's me. That's correct. I love this AI." And then he got out his set of problems that he's doing research on. And he put in, what is the answer to this thing I've been working on for a year? And then it gave back something it didn't know because he was pushing the boundaries, and he was like, "That's wrong. That's wrong too. You cannot trust this AI. That's wrong." So there is something to it doesn't know the boundaries of the research, and the professors are on the forefront.
Kenan, what you said before, should we worry that AI data is going to be created by AI?
Oh, it's already happening, right? The amount of data that's generated by generative AI, it's very hard to define a boundary between what is being cycled back in and what's actually new knowledge that's derived by people with PhDs. And which is why I think our role as leadership and faculty is really essential in its societal impact. And we have already learned about generative AI systems hitting a limit on the amount of knowledge that's available, right? Because much of the knowledge might be behind an authentication, kind of a wall behind the systems that are locked in. And how do you create new knowledge that AI can then learn from?
Okay, we are a little short on time, and I'd like to give Larry the last word here. Larry, following this discussion, do you leave the webinar more confident and more optimistic, or less confident, less optimistic about the implications of AI for the learning experience of our grad and undergrad students?
I come away more optimistic, but it's up to us to adjust to AI, because AI is coming. And so if it's not already here. So we're going to have to be very flexible in the way we adjust.
I think that's a good last word for the webinar. I'd like to let our audience know that our next webinar is on October 14th. The title is When Corporate Leaders Speak Out, Free Speech or Fiduciary Breach. Larry's guests will be Paul Roth, a senior partner at McDermott, Will & Schulte, and Bert Newborn, the Norman Dorson Professor of Civil Liberties Emeritus, NYU Law School, and founding legal director, Brennan Center for Justice. So join us on October 14th for another really riveting, compelling conversation. Thank you all. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, James. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Kanan.
And thank you.